And welcome to CampusCT. Welcome to CampusCT's Navigating the Job Hunt event. We're really excited to have you guys all here today and to have our panelists here as well. We will be recording this event for people that aren't able to make it. My name is Patricia Zajac. I am with CampusCT and Advanced CT. And I'm really excited for this event in particular because just a year ago, I was in many of your guys' shoes. I was a student at Central Connecticut State University, graduating less than a month, not really sure what my next move was. I didn't have a job lined up. So there was a lot of unanswered questions. So I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to say today, and I hope that it's really valuable to you guys as you search for jobs or internships. So in this effort, I'm really happy to introduce our panelists. These are hiring managers from some of the top employers in Connecticut. So another reason CampusCT is working to keep students in the state because we have such great employers in our state. So please feel free to ask questions for the panelists. That will be at the end. You can submit your questions throughout. I do have quite a bit of questions to ask them. So if they're not answered, we're happy to answer your questions. So without further ado, Leanne, would you mind introducing yourself? Talk a little bit about your experience and introduce Mirador as well. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. My name is Leanne Zielinski. I'm an associate in the Employee Experience Department at Mirador. Mirador is a fintech firm located in Stamford. We offer technology and operational resources to our clients who are ultra high net worth individuals. The primary or the biggest piece of our business is consolidated financial reporting. And we've experienced a great growth trajectory in the past year, adding over 100 new positions. So it's a very exciting time to be at Mirador. I am responsible for hiring several entry-level positions, as well as instituting and nurturing the relationships we have with our local universities. And thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Jacqueline, if you would like to go next, introduce yourself as well as OTIS.
Yes, definitely. Thank you all. I'm Jacqueline. I work at OTIS Elevator. OTIS is the world's oldest and largest elevator company in the entire world. So we do everything from manufacturing, installing, service, maintenance, repair, modernizing, pretty much anything you can think of when you think of an elevator, we do. And we actually pioneered the industry. So it's a great company. We're a global organization, but our global headquarters are actually in Connecticut in Farmington. So we have, quite a few offices in the Farmington, Hartford, Bloomfield area, which is great. And so my main responsibility at the company, I manage all of our early career programs nationally. So not just the Connecticut office, but all of our branches and all different locations across the US. We have about 120 or so offices across the US. And that falls everything from university relations, managing our internship program, training and development, recent, college grads and college hires, and really across all disciplines. So everything from engineering to finance to sales and, pretty much everything in between.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jacqueline. Jamie, would you like to introduce yourself and Travelers?
Sure. So hello, I am Jamie Roshka. I'm from Travelers. Travelers is a property casualty insurance company. So we offer insurance products to not only individuals, but also businesses. So we cover different things like your home, your auto, personal belongings, as well as providing insurance for businesses like workers' compensation or general liability. And then we offer specialty insurance. So in our bond area, things like construction bonds, working with financial institutions like banks to provide coverage to specialty products that they might need. So we have been in business for over 165 years. We are the only property casualty insurance company on the Dow Jones, which we're very proud of. So we are a huge player in the Hartford area. We do have offices nationwide, but most of our opportunities are in the Hartford, Connecticut location, with some opportunities in our St. Paul, Minnesota location as well. So I am a director of university relations, and I manage the recruiting strategy and process for our leadership and development programs. We have 8 leadership and development programs at Travelers, constantly looking for folks from different areas like actuarial, finance, underwriting, all different areas within the organization. So the nice thing is that we're such a large company that we do have an opportunity for just about any major and just about anyone. So happy to be here with you guys today.
Yes, thank you so much, Jamie. Perfect. I think this is a great time to start. I will say to our participants, please take notes. You never know what you'll hear, so have a notepad ready or your computer ready. And as I said, submit any questions in the chat and we'll save that for the end. So perfect. Our first subject for today is finding the right fit for a job. So I remember when I was looking for jobs, you end up scrolling through hundreds of different job titles and different companies and industries, and you're someone who's looking for the right fit can get quite lost. So this is actually a question for all 3 of you. And it's, what would you advise applicants to do or ask themselves to ensure that the opportunities they are applying for are the right fit for them? Leanne, if you would like to begin.
I did it again, sorry. I think it's important to take a self-assessment to see what you really like doing, what you're passionate about, and see where those passions transfer to a job. Are you a people person? Are you more of an introvert? Do you want to do sales? Would you rather be sitting behind a computer all day? Ask yourself those kinds of questions. And then I think, first, when you're starting out, it's important to cast a wide net. And also to figure out sort of what you're looking for in your first job. Is it culture, mentorship, growth? Are you just trying to get your feet wet in a particular area? I think those are all really good questions to ask. And also, it's your first job, and know that I think it's also the hardest job to get, and your career will pivot. So don't be too upset if you don't feel like it's the perfect job for you at that time, because career paths take many different roads, and things may change. So just kind of give yourself a little bit of a break about that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for mentioning, because I think students typically put a lot of pressure on themselves to find the perfect job, and sometimes it doesn't work that way. So it's good to pivot, and sometimes you didn't know that thing you didn't know you wanted was the right fit for you. So thank you for mentioning that. We appreciate it. Jacqueline, if you would like to answer that also, what should students look out for and ask themselves to make sure they're looking for the right opportunities?
Yeah, and I think Leanne covered so many awesome things that I totally agree with. I would say, aside from that also, really think long-term, right? I mean, this is something that I even very much outside of college, later in my career, I always tell students that I talk to, like, don't necessarily go with like the flashy name or the flashy product. Like, you have to find a company that the culture and the values really align with your own, because I have learned from experience, sometimes those flashy companies and the flashy names or the like cool products, necessarily don't align with my values, or they don't treat, employees the way I personally want to be treated. And so the cool products only get you so far, right? It's the companies that I have stayed at for a really long time that, it's more of those cultural type things that really align with me. So sometimes it can be hard to assess that on an interview, but you can sometimes, get some things out of them. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and make sure that it's something, as much as you can, that is really going to, be a company that you can see yourself growing with, and that, really aligns with what you want, just as a human being, right? And you think is going to be a good fit for you, and a place that you want to go to every day. I think you spend so much time at work. It's really, really hard sometimes when, you don't feel like it's the right company for you or the right culture for you. And so that's what I think is the most important thing. And what I learned, later on, like, forget about all the other stuff. Sometimes it's, are these the kind of people that you want to work with every day? Or is this the kind of company that you want to, see these people all the time? And those are the companies that I've stayed for, much longer than like the cool big names where, you get there and you're like, oh, I don't think this was for me. So that's, just a piece of advice I always give everyone.
That's awesome. Definitely something important to consider, who you're going to be working with, and if you fit in that way culturally. Thank you, Jacqueline. Jamie, if you would like to chime in, and if you have anything to add on what students should ask themselves or do when they're looking for the right fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leanne and Jacqueline covered most of it. The one thing I'll just piggyback on what Jacqueline was just saying is, I say to students all the time, sometimes it's not always about the opportunity, but it's about the people that you're working with. Because you could have your dream job, but have the worst boss in the world, and it totally ruins the experience for you. But if you are maybe open to different opportunities, different career paths, and thinking like, maybe this is what I want to do, but you have a great connection with your manager or great connection with the team, sometimes that makes you kind of fall in love with your job more so than, what you thought could be your dream job. So it's really important to make that connection with the people. As Jacqueline was saying, it's the culture. It's, is this the right fit for me? I'm looking at the morals of the company. Is it something that I feel proud to work for? So really thinking about, it's not just the job itself, but sometimes it's about the people. And, you truly do spend more time with the people at work than you do your family and friends. So you have to like them, and you have to like the environment. So really think about that as you're interviewing and you're meeting people and going into the different offices and seeing, is this where I can see myself as a fit based on, the interactions that I've had with the folks that I've interviewed with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Jamie. That was great. Perfect. I would love to go right into our second section, which is standing out as an applicant. Because I know with today's world, it's really hard. Everything is done online. You don't really walk through a door to an employer anymore and hand them a paper application. So everyone's just trying to find out how they can stand out as an applicant. So Jamie, when students are trying to stand out and make sure everything's perfect with their resumes and applications, what are some red flags, or what are some things that you see in applicants that students should look out for?
Sure. So what I would say is, really, when you're applying for jobs, make sure that you're reading the job description and trying to tailor your resume to reflect what's happening in the job description in terms of the skill sets that we're looking for. So I think about the technology space, and if we're asking that, you've had experience with some coding languages, or you've had experience with Python, highlight that on your resume, because that's going to be keywords that we're going to search for when we're looking for candidates. Some red flags would be, don't put your picture on the resume. I know it seems to be a trend, and I think like maybe in marketing areas, but definitely don't want to see a picture. Don't get too fancy with your resume in terms of formatting and things like that, because our applicant tracking system that we utilize, where you all will go in and apply, it just transfers a PDF. And so sometimes it can come off looking really funky when we're looking at the version that you submit, because you're trying to add graphics and things like that. You don't need all that. You can just send, the basic resume. I would say as a student, you should keep your resume to one page. when we are dealing with folks that have more experience, maybe 10 plus years of work experience, then yes, they could potentially have a 2-page resume. But if you are a student, you've had one internship, your resume should stay to 1 page, because a lot of times we're looking at maybe 200 resumes in a day. When it gets to be, multiple pages and it's a lot of space and the format's off, it just is a turnoff to us that we want, like, I don't want to have to keep reading all of these pages of experience when it can be consolidated to the 1 page. And I would say too, include your GPA, include, relevant classes or experiences that you've had that could be beneficial to the job that you're applying to. A lot of things can be translatable in terms of skills. So, maybe you were a summer camp counselor, but you're applying for a human resources job. You know how to work with little kids and how to, negotiate with them to get them to do what you need them to do. That's a really great skill to have, and it can be translated, in the working world. So I would say, keep your resume to 1 page, really try to tailor it to that job description. If you have an objective line in your resume, which is not needed, but if you do have it, make sure that you're not saying like, I'm looking for an internship at Travelers, and then you're submitting that resume to OTIS. That's not a good look, because, that's the attention to detail that we're looking for. So, I think it is hard when we're dealing with a lot of resumes. And so a lot of times, if you can keep your resume succinct and really tailored to the job description, like I said, you have a better chance of being looked at by the recruiter and pushed forward for an interview.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Jamie. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add in terms of red flags or just things students should look out for when they're in the application process?
Yeah, definitely. The only thing I'll add that I always tell students, try to, and again, it's going to be hard, right? Because you've maybe been a camp counselor, you worked at the ice cream shop, whatever it is, you haven't been the CEO yet, but try to make as much as possible on your resume quantifiable. So, and that doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? So I've seen resumes before where, they worked in an office and they put their bullet as like made copies. I would suggest put something like made 80 to 100 copies per day. It's the same spacing on the resume. You're still taking up the 1 line, but that's telling me like, okay, they were busy, they did something. Or, instead of just putting like attended to customers' needs, put something like attended, to between anywhere from 100 to 200 customers' needs per day or per week or whatever. So just add in some of those quantifiable numbers. This is advice I give people at all levels of their career. Make sure you have those on your resume. And just because you feel like, you haven't had these high level jobs, you still have done things that you can quantify, right? You probably haven't saved, the company $5 billion yet, but anything you can do to give the recruiter a little bit more meat as to what you actually did, I think that that's always, very helpful when looking at a resume.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacqueline. That's great. Leanne, I have a kind of a loaded question for you. So seeing that you've been at Mirador for a bit, do you have a success story or a case study or example of somebody that stood out to you throughout the application process? And please keep it confidential to the applicant and the person that may be working at your company today. But, what are some things they did? What are some characteristics they had that our students can emulate? I think it's important to know what you guys recognize as good practice so that students can also follow in that direction. So please, if you have an example, we would love to hear what you have experienced.
Sure. We had a recent hire who applied for one of our entry-level positions, and he was doing something not really related to the current position we had open, but he had experience through college and an internship that was applicable. And what really impressed me about him was he made a really good pitch about his skills, about what he was able to do, what he wanted to do, what he could bring to Mirador. And he was just very confident in his expression of who he was. and the value add he will bring to the company. He, asked really great questions throughout all the rounds of interviews, and everyone was very impressed with his demeanor and his professionalism. And he was the type of candidate that, looking on paper, you might not think this person is going to be a superstar. So it worked out really well, and he's been with us for about 3 months now, and he's doing really, really well. So I think really, exude that confidence, have your story down, tell what you want to do and what you have done. And I think that confidence really goes a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people get really nervous in their interviews, which is totally natural, but it's good to remain natural and be yourself, because that's really what you guys are looking for. Who are we about to hire, and does that personality and that person fit right in? And sometimes, it turns out that they end up in a different spot at your company and it's a better fit. So that's awesome. Thank you, Leanne. Jamie, I'm really interested. This topic always interested me, and it's kind of one of those topics that no one wants to talk about. But in terms of negotiating offers, when should students negotiate? What is more negotiable than other items? What do you see when a student asks and will negotiate their benefits and pay?
So this is kind of a two-pronged answer. So what I'll say is that for our leadership and development programs, which are very specific, they have set rates. So a set hourly rate and a set on incoming salary. Those are non-negotiable. That is set by our compensation team. We don't have any leverage in terms of being able to negotiate anything in terms of those rates, because everyone that comes into that program receives the same hiring salary, the same hourly rate, things like that. So, but when it doesn't hurt to ask. So I always say, I understand why students ask to negotiate, because the worst thing that can happen is they say, we don't negotiate, or no, we're not going to negotiate. And then, so if you feel that in your mind, you were expecting to receive a couple $1,000s more for your starting salary, and you want to go back and just say, this is what I was expecting. Is there any room for negotiation? Then the recruiter can tell you either yes or no. So I do think, it's an appropriate question. Just know that there are some roles that they have set rates that can't be negotiated. One thing that we don't negotiate would be our benefits. Those are set those are standard in terms of what we provide and offer through Travelers. Sometimes, some of our roles may have like a sign-on bonus, and that could be negotiated. So maybe it's a couple $1,000s more. But again, it's all about just asking that question. It doesn't hurt to ask, because worst case scenario, they say no, or no, we don't negotiate, but you don't know if you don't ask. So I would say, where it gets tricky, or where I maybe would get turned off, is if someone's coming in $10,000 or $15,000 more than what we offered, with really no basis for why they're asking for that money. Just like, oh, I saw online, then I should be making, this amount of money, when it's like, well, according to our compensation team and all the research that they do, we feel very comfortable with what we're offering. So just make sure you do your research, and understanding, the number that you might come back with is appropriate, and you're not turning off the recruiter by coming back in with, a number. Because we've had interns, or even full-time folks. We had an intern this past summer that I think we were offering, somewhere in the high 20s for an hourly rate, and they wanted 35. We were like, we can't do it. I don't know where you got that number from, but that's just not, the rate that we have. So it feels a little icky to kind of have to turn folks down. But again, ask the question, do your research before you go in and negotiate, to make sure that you have a valid reason or a valid backup in terms of like the number that you're looking for. So that would, it's a little bit tricky depending on the role, but it's worth it. Like I said, the worst thing they can say is no.
Absolutely. There's many respectful ways to ask that question, and finding the right balance between your experience and what you're applying for is definitely a needed task to be done. So thank you. That's exactly right. Leanne, do you have anything to add on that subject that you've experienced, or things that to you or your company are maybe more negotiable than others?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I agree that it doesn't hurt to ask, because the answer can just be no, and you move on from there. But I think, one of the things when you are negotiating, try to bring up a couple of different skills that you have that you think would make you a good fit for the role. Sort of try to sell yourself a little bit when you're negotiating. And I think the other thing to do is do it over the phone rather than email. Give the recruiter a call and have a conversation about it. And then just be very gracious and thankful about it, even if it doesn't turn out the way that you hoped it would. I think that's pretty much my advice on negotiating.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I know every organization has mostly the same types of qualities they're looking for in candidates, but sometimes organizations are looking for slightly different things. Jacqueline, what types of qualities is OTIS looking for in a candidate?
Yeah, and I mean, we hire for such diverse positions at the early career space, right? So what we look for in a sales professional, not necessarily what we would look for in an engineer, right? So I think all of those, things that go along with that. I would also, I think for any job, right? The same as I was telling you before, like evaluate the people, evaluate their personalities. Is this someone you want to go to work with, right? I think on the flip side as well, even if you are in a technical field and you're like, well, my personality doesn't matter. Like I'm a good engineer, I'm good in, digital technology or whatever it is, the managers are also looking at you as, is this someone that I want to work with 40 hours a week? Is this someone who I find is going to be coachable, is going to be approachable if I do have, feedback that might not be the most positive, right? So I would say really for any job, when you are interviewing, make sure to get your personality across, right? Like be genuine, make sure that you are displaying who you really are at the end of the day, because you don't want to put on, a facade and then, they hire you and that's not really who you are every day. So I always say like, be yourself, but also, be excited and interested in the position. I will tell you, as someone who's interviewed probably thousands of people, the worst quality that I'll say when I interview someone is that they just don't seem like they want to be there. They don't seem interested. They don't seem eager. And you don't have to pretend like elevators have been your dream job for the past 22 years. They weren't mine. It wasn't mine. Trust me. But you want to demonstrate your excitement about the company and about the opportunity. And even if you're telling every company you interview that same thing, nobody will know that but you. But you want to get that across during an interview. So I think that is just so important, because I have seen managers, resume to resume, could be totally equal resumes. They're deciding on the person. They will 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100 go with the person who, came in, was really interested and eager in the role. Like really, you could feel that they want this job, not just that they want a job. And even sometimes I've seen resumes that maybe aren't equal, and they will go with the lesser resume, so to speak, when it's the person that, really demonstrated that willingness, eagerness, all of those qualities that I was talking about in the interview process. So that's always something I tell people. And, I think it's easy to get nervous on an interview and kind of like forget how to be, an approachable person. But I think that's something that you do need to focus on, because it is something that is looked at and evaluated just as much as any technical skills or GPA that you may have.
Absolutely. And Jacqueline, out of curiosity, is Otis doing a mix of virtual and in-person interviews?
I would say 99.9 of our interviews these days are virtual.
Okay, very cool. Awesome.
We interview on campus. So after a career fair, we'll book a room the next day and we'll try to do some on-campus interviews. But for the most part, anything outside of that is virtual. And that's for a couple of different reasons. A lot of our branch locations, the manager may not. So for sales, for instance, we have regional managers that may not sit in the same location that, that sales rep would go into, or, a lot of us, I'm completely remote. I work from home, 100% when I'm not traveling the country, which is pretty often, but I don't work in an office. So there's a combination of reasons. And also we found that it's a lot easier for the students, right? Like you have classes, you have jobs. Like I know it would have been really hard for me. I went to UConn, which I know a lot of you did. It would have been really hard for me to like get up to Farmington, to do an interview in the middle of the day, when I had work and I had classes and I had all these other things going on, where it's so much easier, especially these days. I didn't have video calls when I was in college. But now that we do, you can really have a very similar type interview virtually that you can, same as you can have in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's definitely the time now is virtual, but in person is valuable. So when you can get it in, that's awesome, especially on college campuses in the home grounds, they feel comfortable. Sometimes going to the employer and going to the company can be a little bit intimidating and make people nervous. So being able to do it there, that's really helpful, I think. Okay, so Jamie, I'm going to ask you a similar question, but more in the scope of an applicant who became an employee. They got the job, right? What qualities do you guys look for, and what do you see in new employees that just make them look like superstars? Like they're going to be it, and they're going to do so well here. Like what do you guys see, and what do you guys recognize?
Yeah, so similar to what Jacqueline was saying, if you ask anyone at Travelers, like, did you always want to go into insurance? They're going to say no. So much, like Otis and elevators, people aren't like, insurance is the top of my list. But I think that we find that students, can't, once they kind of get over the idea of insurance and understanding that it is actually a very diverse area, it's very interesting. No day is the same. It's actually pretty cool what we do. And it's a sustainable career because we're always going to need insurance. The students that we see that are most successful tend to be the ones that, are really open to the idea of working at Travelers, to looking at the different opportunities. But they go above and beyond. They're looking at, their internship. What are my, tasks for the summer? What are my responsibilities? But how can I take this to the next level? What questions can I ask? How can I show that I'm curious about this area and I want to really learn more and take it all in? The interns that tend to be the most impressive, the ones that we want to pursue to, come back for a full-time opportunity, are those ones that really are asking the questions. They're making connections, they're networking, they're getting themselves kind of out there in an appropriate way to really say, I'm interested in this place. I want to learn more. I want to soak it all up while I'm here to really understand the bigger picture of how this organization works. So it's the curiosity, it's, the networking ability, and it's, taking things above and beyond maybe what you were tasked with and really showcasing your skill set. And then just being open to, further opportunity within the organization. I think it's, once you make those connections, it's just saying, can I see myself here in a full-time capacity? Is this where I want to be? Is this a company that I want to be a part of? And really taking it for the full experience. So that tends to be the folks that are most successful, is just that, the curiosity, the networking, and taking it above and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's notable qualities to look for in candidates and in your new employees, especially as they're learning and just absorbing everything in. Leanne, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I would love to hear what you have seen or heard from new hires and that are just doing really well. They're becoming superstars in the organization. What kind of qualities do these people usually have, or what do they do that just really makes them stand out?
I think the people who really stand out take time to explore the different resources available to help them do their role. So understanding the terminology, knowing who to go ask questions to, where to find answers, that type of thing, kind of going along with curiosity. And people who aren't afraid to speak up and ask questions. I think asking a lot of questions helps you do your job better, but it also shows people that you're engaged and you're interested and you really put an emphasis on doing your job well. And also, kind of basic, but take good notes. When you go to a meeting, make sure that you're either taking notes on your computer or in a notebook. There's lots of people that go to meetings and don't write anything down. But the people that are more successful seem to really get an understanding of what's happening in the meeting and know what they should take note of. And I think also the more successful people are the ones who really take the time to do their work and then ask for feedback. They really get, they put a lot of effort into it, but then getting feedback and then taking that feedback to heart and really applying it to the next thing they do. So that's really where we've seen our most successful employees.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, doing everything right the first time is totally helpful. Taking more notes than less notes, especially in the beginning, is very helpful to a successful start at a new job. So thank you, Leanne. I appreciate that. Jamie, I'm going to hop back to you. I'm really interested, especially with travelers. What do you guys have in terms of mentorship in your organization? Who should they ask for mentorship opportunities in the organization? How should they get started? And what does the mentorship opportunities usually entail?
Yeah, so all of our interns are paired with a peer mentor, like a buddy for the summer. So it's someone within their department that is able to help them kind of navigate the internship, ask basic questions like, where's the restroom? Or, what time should I go get lunch? But other things like, hey, I'm working on this project, would love if you could just get another set of eyes on it and let me know, what you think. So that's kind of set up as a buddy system within their department. On a full-time perspective, all of our folks in our leadership and development programs are assigned a mentor. So the programs are rotational. So the folks actually receive a new mentor every year just to make different connections. So we try to pair them up with the senior leader within, a different business unit from where they're currently working, just to kind of expand their network and things like that. So that is a formal process. But what I would say is a lot of times, those work well, and sometimes they don't, because you just may not have a connection with someone when it's assigned to you. So I always encourage folks to try to find those informal mentors that you may come across when you're working. So maybe it's someone that you were in a meeting with and you were really impressed with, a presentation that they gave, and I want to learn more about them. So, approaching them and just asking like, hey, can we catch up for coffee one day? Or, could we make that connection so that maybe that is someone that you can utilize as an informal mentor as you go through your career. It's also thinking about, maybe it's professors or folks within college that you've met that you can go back to and say, I'm currently in this role, I'm looking to move on to something else. I just want to talk this through with someone that has expertise in this area. So a lot of organizations do provide that opportunity to provide you a mentor in terms of a formal mentor. Maybe it's assigned to you, but always think about and try to find and make those connections where you have that informal mentor. That's just someone that maybe you've come across in, projects that you've worked on, or I actually have a mentor that interviewed me when I came to Travelers, and she's still someone that I go to just to connect, on a quarterly basis. How are things going? What's happening within my career when I have big things going on, or, an opportunity might come up, I might reach out to her and just, want to catch up quickly. So again, I think it's making those connections and just finding people that you get along with really well, that you feel like can be a resource to you. Maybe it's going to be, your recruiter, or maybe it's going to be someone that your first manager. I think it's always just keeping up those connections. You never know where you're going to find yourself in 10, 20 years. Things tend to come full circle. So sometimes you might end up working back with people that you started with. But, seeking out mentors, I think, is a great idea, but that, a lot of that is just expanding your network and trying to find those informal connections. Sometimes those are more impactful and meaningful than those ones that are more formal.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the natural connections to somebody is a lot more effective than, being paired up with somebody that you might not exactly click with. So yeah, I agree with you there. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add in terms of OTIS and what you guys have over there?
Yeah, nothing to add. Ours is pretty similar to what Jamie was talking about. All of our interns and then all of our entry level, like recent college grads who come to work for us full time, they all are assigned a mentor or buddy. We struggle with the same thing. What do we call it? Now we're calling it like a training coach in some areas. It's all the same thing. So they do get assigned one, but then also, just throughout your career, this is something I really struggled with. I'm actually a very introverted person. So when I leave a company, I'm like, close that door, start anew. Or when I have a coworker leave the company, I'm like, okay, they're in a different place now. And I struggled throughout, my career, keeping those relationships alive. And it really has just been the last couple of years that I've really tried to turn that around for myself personally. I was seeing, my friend would get a job with a manager she worked for 10 years ago, or this person recruited her because she used to work with them at that company. And I was like, that never happens to me. And I realized it was because I was really shutting those doors with people and not making a conscious effort to keep those relationships going. And again, it has been something that's been personally a challenge for me, but it has been so beneficial. And I have seen, a difference in myself and, just the way things are going for me professionally since I've been, making more of a conscious effort to do that. So I would say, take every opportunity, every advantage to keep those relationships alive. It doesn't have to be every day or even every week, it could be every couple of months even, like Jamie was saying, just like a quick check-in, how are things going in your career? But it does make a huge difference, especially as you, continue to try to grow your career, and maybe the company you start out with isn't the company you want to retire with and you're looking to go somewhere else. Those keeping that network alive is just super important.
Yep. Something I've learned, your network is everything. And for college students, you don't really have a big network, which is fine, but it will grow and you will capitalize on it eventually. So very important to keep those relationships alive. Leanne, I have my last question is for you. Very similar question, but what type of resources do you guys provide at Mirador that can help someone be successful in their new role?
So we have ongoing training and training that starts from day one, and it takes lots of different forms. We have a learning management system that we use. We have a training team that we use. New analysts often help to train each other in what they've learned. Managers do a lot of training as well, and then there are weekly manager one-on-one meetings, which are great. We also really pride ourselves on keeping our team smaller. So it's anywhere from 6 to 8 analysts with a team lead. So there's a lot of daily interaction and a lot of coaching that goes on. And team leads are always very accessible to their analysts to help with any questions that come up. And we really, this is sort of an ongoing thing that Mirador is doing, but we have a culture of learning. No question is a stupid question. We have lots of people who are very interested in helping to answer questions and really guide people along. And that's really just part of the infrastructure and culture of Mirador.
That's awesome. That's really good to know. Support is really important when you're starting out. So that's
Definitely.
perfect. All right. That is all my questions. Thank you guys for being so great. We do have a question from Tom asking, and please, to anyone that's participating and listening in. If you have any questions, please write in the chat, or you can turn on your microphone to ask. But from Tom, we have a question asking how someone can reach out to you guys, and if it's okay to reach out to you for additional advice and insight in terms of open positions and just getting their self set up in the grounds.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd say the best way to connect would just be through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And, just letting us know, you saw us on the panel, because we get a lot of connections, but it is nice when you kind of just say, hey, I saw you at this event or this organization, whatever, just so to kind of refresh our memory. So yeah, LinkedIn would be the best way.
Awesome. Great. We also have another question from Evan Gallos. I know I didn't say that correctly, but he is wondering, does the salary question, should it come in the first interview or the second interview or whichever interview? And which are the most important questions? I don't know what he means by that, but probably in terms of, if I had to guess, what are the right questions to ask when you're negotiating your salary? But any one of you can chime in to answer that.
I will say there's new regulations in Connecticut where we have to post our salary ranges now right on the job description. So whenever you go in to apply to a job, the salary range will be in there. So you'll have an idea of what that range is. Now, I will also say that our ranges can be very large. So it is a question, if you want to know what the salary is, I would say wait till the second interview. The first interview typically is just us kind of getting to know you, seeing if you're a fit for the organization, for the role. It's more of a behavioral interview, if you will. The second interview tends to get more into the technical stuff and really digging into your background. So I would save the salary question for the second interview. But again, you can get an idea of the range on the job posting itself. And if you can only ask 2 questions during like at the end of an interview, I think it's important to just ask, more about the job if you need clarity, to really understand what the role is, because there's nothing worse than interviewing someone that didn't read the job posting or doesn't know what the role is, or they have it completely wrong. And then it's like, well, you didn't even take the time to know what you're interviewing for. So using that time at the end of the interview to maybe provide the clarity around the job itself, but doing your research to understand, like, oh, I saw from the job posting, it says that I'm going to be working with agents. What does that really mean? What does that look like? So being very specific in your questions. But really, I wouldn't say there's any right question to ask. It's more just making sure that it's not just, how did I do on this interview? Or what are you looking for in a candidate? Doing some research behind your questions to be very specific to the job, I think says a lot about the candidate.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Jamie, for answering that. We have another question from Carissa. How should students go about answering a question about a starting salary from an employer? A lot of applications I've looked into include a required expected salary section. And an additional question, what specifics stand out to you in an applicant's cover letter? So please, anyone chime in on how they should go about answering questions about a starting salary, because usually recruiters will ask the applicant, what are you looking for in a starting salary? How should they respond to that type of question?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I was actually going to say, just for the last question, Jamie, I will respectfully disagree a little bit. I prefer the salary conversation to come up in the first call. I don't want to waste your time as the candidate. I don't want to waste my time as the recruiter, and I don't want to waste the manager's time. Hours and hours in, if we are super far off in salary, right? So I would rather know. And again, it doesn't have to be, this is the salary, we've met, we agree on the salary, but if we are 30, 40, $50,000 off, which maybe won't happen at the early career level, but it does happen in more professional, higher level roles. You know, and it is just like, we cannot meet anywhere near, and you cannot come down anywhere near where we're going to be. I personally, as a recruiter, would rather know that sooner rather than later and just have that honest conversation. And sometimes you are far off, but the candidate says, you know what, I can, you know, I still want to continue on, you know, I want to hear the other things. Maybe the benefits are stronger than where I currently am. So that base salary is different. But then you get some candidates that are like, I can't go below $70,000. And, you know, if we can only pay 50, I don't want to waste your time or anybody's time on that. So again, you'll probably get different answers from different people, but that's my personal preference. And when I'm a candidate, I do not, it's not the first question I ask. I will leave it until the end, absolutely, of that first call. But I don't even want to be scheduled for a second interview if I don't have some understanding, even if it's a wide range of what that salary is going to be. So that's my opinion. And then, you know, what if the recruiter asks you what you're looking to make? I mean, be honest. I would say, especially because it is illegal in some states for companies to ask you your current salary, I would say never give up what your current salary is, because it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter what your current salary is compared to this job. So I would say, you know, be honest with what you're looking for. Me personally, as a candidate, I always give a range and like a hard minimum. Because again, to my earlier point, if it doesn't matter to me, like, you know, if the benefits are amazing and everything is amazing, and even like that bottom line dollar salary, I can't go below that. I know what that is in my head for me and my family. You know, again, I would rather know that up front. So from a candidate, you know, I would love to hear, I'm looking for, you know, 80 to 90,000, you know, somewhere in that range. And that is going to really depend on, you know, the rest of the benefits and the whole package, right? So I never get stuck on like a specific number, because those other variables do sometimes make you take less, or may make you need more. Maybe their benefits are awful and you do need a little bit more on that base salary to make it work. So personally, I always give a range, and I like that from a candidate as well. That way I know what I'm dealing with. And if there are then other important things, you know, so say for instance, they say, you know, 80 to 90. And I say, well, you know, we're probably going to be on that lower end. What else is important to you in making that decision, so that we can talk about those things? Is it a bonus? Is it medical benefits? Is it paid time off? Like, what are those other things that are important that I can tell you about? So maybe then you are a little bit more flexible on that base salary, or, you know, whatever the situation is. It's different for everybody.
Interesting. Thank you for that response. I think that's really helpful to help navigate through the salary negotiating process. Does anyone else have anything to add in terms of salary and negotiation, and when that topic should come up, and whether or not to answer that question? I think we're good. Perfect. I see another question here submitted by Siddharth. What are the biggest obstacles the employers consider in hiring an international student? If it's about sponsorship, what aspects in particular of sponsorship is restricting them?
I can answer this. Just so we don't generally sponsor international students, except for one program, and that's our data science leadership development program, that are looking for master's or PhD level students in the data analytics realm. So think like STEM majors typically. Really what holds us back or restricts us is the US government rules and regulations. So in order to sponsor a student, we have to show the government that we can't find a candidate in the United States that can perform that job at the same level. And that's why we need to look at international students. So we even get very specific about the majors that we look for, and the skill sets that we look for, because we have to make the case that we need to sponsor students in order to bring them into our organization. So it gets very tricky, and it's, I know it's hard, you know, being an international student. It's not a great message coming from employers, but unfortunately, it's just we're following rules and regulations from the US government perspective. And it has become harder and harder, unfortunately, to sponsor. All of our sponsorships have to go through our legal department. There's a person that is dedicated just to look at the background of candidates that we're looking to sponsor, and things like that. So the restrictions really come from, the government and what we can sponsor based on the role.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. Awesome. We are coming to the end. I don't know if anyone, Jamie, Jacqueline, Leanne, if you guys have any last bits of information to add for our students that are looking to get their new job or new internship, all is welcomed. Let me know if you guys have anything else to add, or are you guys all good?
I would just say some sort of words of wisdom. Just if you're still looking for a job and you're graduating in the next several weeks, don't panic. Everyone finds their job, a job on their own timeline. And you will find something. It may not be your dream job, but it will be something that you can put on your resume and work really hard at and do a great job at, and then move on to the next one. So just everyone take a breath and know that you will get a job eventually. So my words of advice in May.
That's perfect. Thank you, Leanne.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to everyone that joined in today. Thank you to our participants who listened in. I want to let you guys know to, if you guys need anything, you feel free to reach out to Leanne, Jacqueline, and Jamie, but also to keep an eye on CampusCT in your emails. We try to do these events at least once a semester. So if you're still in school, if you're the one looking for an internship or whatever it may be, keep an eye out for CampusCT. We're going to keep updating you guys, and follow our Instagram and Twitter. We have a lot of Connecticut lifestyle content going up on there. So follow us at _CampusCT. And thank you again to Leanne, Jacqueline, Jamie for your time here today. I know it was definitely valuable to the students here, and I'm happy they all had questions for you guys. So thank you. And I hope you guys all have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.